All right, y'all. The first thing I want to do is go over some derivative rules. So here we go. Derivative rules. And the first rule that I want to go over is the product rule. So product rule. And we're going to say if h of x equals f of x times g of x, then we'll say h prime of x equals what? All right, the product rule says that if two functions are being multiplied, when you're taking the derivative, you have to take the derivative of the first and then multiply by the second. So let's do that. Derivative of the first is f prime of x times the second is times g prime of x. Then you add plus the derivative of the second, g prime of x, times the first, f of x. All right, the next rule I want to go over is the quotient rule. And we will say if h of x equals f of x over g of x, then, and now we're going to write what h prime of x is. All right, quotient means division. The quotient rule says if you are dividing two functions, you will do what we called low d high minus high d low over low low. So it goes low, copy the low, g of x. D high means derivative of the high function, minus, make sure you have minus, high, d low, derivative of the bottom, over low low, or you could say low squared, g of x squared. All right, the next rule, we have the chain rule. So now we have a function inside of a function. If h of x equals f of g of x, then h prime of x equals, okay, chain rule, we defined u and v. We also memorized, like if it was a simple chain rule, it's the derivative of the inside times the derivative of the outside, but leave the inside the same. If you like to use u and v, I'm going to show you real quick how you'll get the same answer using u and v. So we would say u is your inside function, u equals g of x, and then v equals your outside function of u, so f of u. We take the derivative of those, g prime of x, and this is f prime of u, and then we put them together, multiply them. So we have g prime of x times f prime of, but u was g of x, so we have f prime of g of x. Same thing. Okay, and we have one more rule to go over. We've got inverse derivatives. So for inverse derivatives, and we're going to say if, I'm kind of out of space here, I'm going to go down here, if f of x is, actually let's say if g of x, sorry, if g of x equals f inverse of x. So this would be saying f is the inverse of g. F is inverse of g. Okay, so if we have this scenario, we say the derivative of g, so g prime of x, equals 1 over the derivative of f inverse of x. F prime of f inverse of x. All right, those are all the derivative rules. Now we're going to go to the special topics packet and do the 4 problems on the front page. All right, so now we're working on the derivative special topics packet, the derivative rules special topics packet. And we're just going to step through each of these problems, make sure we know how to solve each type. So for the first problem, m of t equals sine of t times cosine of t. We have a product because of the multiplication. So this is a product. That means we need to use the product rule. So we would say m prime of t equals the derivative of the first, which the derivative of sine is cosine of t, times the second, times cosine of t, plus the derivative of the second, which is negative sine of t, times the first, which is sine of t. Then we'll simplify, so we have cosine squared t. And then this turns into a negative sine squared t. So this is m prime of t. All right. Let's do the next one. So n of x equals 3 over x squared plus 3x. We have division here, so this is the quotient rule. So we're going to do n prime of x equals low d high, so low is x squared plus 3x, copy low, d high, the derivative of 3 is 0, minus high, 3, d low, so the derivative of the bottom, which is 2x plus 3, over low, low, or low squared, x squared plus 3x squared. Okay, so anything times 0 is 0. So then we just need to focus on distributing in the numerator to simplify. So equals n prime of x equals, and remember we're simplifying because on the multiple choice, they will be simplified. So we have negative 6x, negative 3 times 2, minus 9 over x squared plus 3x squared. Multiple choice probably won't be simplified further than that. So yeah, we'll just go with this. All right, cool. Let's do the bottom two. So now we have a chain rule for this one. So I'm going to use u and v. I'm going to define my inner function and call that u. So u equals x cubed minus square root of x. And then v would equal my outside function sine of what I called u. Now we're going to take the derivative of each piece, and I did not leave a lot of room. So for this one, we have 3x squared minus, and then this is x to the 1/2. So we bring down that 1/2. We have 1/2 x, and then subtract 1 from 1/2. We have to the negative 1/2. That's an exponent. All right, and then we take the derivative of sine of u. That would be cosine of u. But don't forget, we can't leave u. So we're going to plug u back in when we multiply these. So now we're going to say f prime of x equals 3x squared minus, I'm just copying the derivatives, 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. That derivative times this one, times cosine of u, times cosine of, but u was x cubed minus square root of x. So I plug that back in. And we're done. On multiple choice, remember that this is going to be represented properly. So we would see it show up as 3x squared minus 1 over 2 square root of x. and then parentheses times cosine of x cubed minus square root of x. And there's potential that they would like distribute the cosine in. Usually they have answers fully factored though, so I think it would look like this on multiple choice. All right, let's do the last one. So we have g of x equals this function inside of the natural log function. So you have a function inside of a function, you have to use chain rule. So we're going to define u. I'm going to do it, leave some more space this time. U is going to be my inside function, e to the x plus 1 over x. And then v is going to be my outside function, which is natural log of what we called u. Now we're going to take the derivatives of these functions. Derivative of e to the x is e to the x. Derivative of 1 over x is the same as taking the derivative. Remember, this is x to the negative 1. That's what this thing is. So we're going to say, take the negative 1 down in front, negative x, and then subtract 1 to the negative 2. And now we do derivative natural log of u. That's going to be 1 over u. Don't forget, we will plug back in this thing that we call u into u when we multiply these two. All right, so let's say g prime of x equals the derivative of the first, or the inside, derivative of the inside function. We have e to the x. I'm going to convert this, so it's minus 1 over x squared times the derivative of the second, oh my gosh, not second, outside. So this is the derivative of the inside times the derivative of the outside, but leave the inside there. So 1 over u was e to the x plus 1 over x. E to the x plus 1 over x. All right, and that's a pretty ugly one. In multiple choice, you would probably have to do something to simplify this denominator. So you'd have to get a common denominator and add these, but we're not going to worry about that right now. All right, so if you want to practice these, you have a packet that has lots of practice problems. I may add some videos to YouTube of me just like doing these problems similar to this video if that would be helpful for you. Y'all have a great day. Bye.